Hi, everyone, and welcome to TLDR Week 2 for Information Security. This week, we're going to be talking about trust and ethics. The learning outcomes for the week is I want you to be able to explain the concepts of trust and trustworthiness, describe some important ethical issues in computer security, discuss ethical issues in regards to bug handling, bug disclosure, breach disclosure, and data exfiltration, and discuss compliance in relation to state and federal data handling. Trust and transitive trust are actually fundamental building blocks for how security and the security infrastructure is put together. Trust is the amount of confidence that you have in a particular person or thing or institution. For example, if we think about transitive trust and certificates and digital signatures, this actually relates to the internet that we know and love and probably use every day. So when you open up a web page, you are probably used to seeing something in the URL bar that will give you an indicator of how trusted the web page is. You might see a locking symbol. It might be green, yellow, or red. They will sometimes use color coding, padlock, open padlock, things like that. Those are actually specifically there to tell you if they are using SSL. Is this going to be a securely encrypted web page? And has this web page been verified? Now, what they mean by verified is when we talk about web pages on the internet, there's actually a number of different companies that will sign certificates that basically says, I trust that you don't have anything malicious on your web page. These particular companies will pay small amounts of money, basically bribes, to places like Firefox, Chrome, Edge, so that they are one of the trusted certificate signers. So if you are trying to make a website and you want this to be a trusted website, your steps to do that have to be making sure that you're using HTTPS, which you can set up for free. The certificate, however, you would normally pay a small amount of money for so that somebody can sign the certificate and say that you are trusted. So that when people go to your web page, they will see that you are a trusted web page. Now, they aren't actually really checking that much. Normally, these certificates signed end up being more along the lines of, we trust you until you have proven that you shouldn't be trusted. And that's what it takes to make what is considered a secure web page. And this is true of everything from bank pages all the way down to newsletter pages. So that transitive trust is actually something that's set up so that you can say, okay, well, I trust Firefox or Chrome. Firefox or Chrome trusts DigiCert, and DigiCert says that that's a trusted website. And so that web of trust is what's known as transitive trust. Ethics is the idea of what is right and what is wrong. It's specifically moral principles. Now, everybody has a different set of ethics. This is going to be based off of your culture, your family, if you went to a church, didn't go to a church, if you had a particular school that you went to, country you grew up in, that's all going to have an effect on what you consider ethical or not. Now, there are some things that are generally considered unethical, such as stealing a lot of money. There really aren't people that are necessarily going to say stealing a lot of money is the right choice to make. However, that's not necessarily true that everybody's going to say that. There might be some people that are going to say, well, but what about Robin Hood? Robin Hood steals a lot of money and gives it to the poor, so is he doing ethically the right thing? So, ethics is very much a complicated gray area for a lot of cases, and it's really about what is considered right and what is considered wrong. Now, this is actually really important in information security, partially because in some cases we have rules and laws that are going to regulate what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, but a lot of cases are judgments that you need to be able to make. For example, Let's say you work in a hospital, and in the hospital, you have access to billing records. You work in the billing department, and you notice that there is a bill that is going out to your babysitter, and it says that she was in the hospital for some variety of mental health. Now, there's obviously, stigma about mental health, which is a whole separate issue, but ethically, do you do anything about this information that you now have? Now, legally, you're not supposed to do anything. If you work in a hospital and you work in a billing department and you find a bill for something, you are not supposed to share that or let that affect anything else that you do. But if you find a bill for somebody related to mental health that you've trusted to watch your children, what do you do now? Now, for some people, they're going to have very much a strict, I know exactly what I would do. Some people might have to think about it. If you don't have kids, you could think about somebody who's maybe babysitting your dog, cat, car, favorite video game, whatever you're really attached to. But it's more a matter of thinking about what would you do in this situation. Hackers, they have been using the terms white hat, gray hat, and black hat. Now, as of summer 2020, and the somehow we're having disagreements about why we should treat all people as human, because somehow some people think that we shouldn't treat all people as human. Um, but at any rate, they are starting to examine the language that's being used, finally, so that we are using less racist language in a lot of the places that we work. Now, an actual very good example of some racist language is white hat and black hat. Now, this originally was actually from old westerns. One of the ways that you could tell the good guy and the bad guy in old westerns is if you had a cowboy in a white hat, then they were the good guy. If you had a cowboy in a black hat, they were the bad guy. If you aren't into old westerns, you can actually see the same thing in Star Wars, and you can see the outfits the Jedi wear versus the outfits that Darth Vader wears. If you don't like westerns and you don't like Star Wars, I don't even know what to say. So, white hats and black hats, the current vocabulary that's being used is white hat is people that hack for good. Black hats are people that don't hack for good, and gray hats are somewhere in the middle. Now, when we say hacking, what we're actually talking about is somebody who makes a computer do something that it wasn't originally intended for. Now, this could be anything from making a printer work with a system that it wasn't originally set up for to convincing a website to give information that it really wasn't supposed to give. And hackers, sort of the colloquial way that we use that now, is people that are convincing computers or computer systems to act in ways that were not originally intended. Now, some examples of ethics in computer security is actually, we can start with people. Kevin Mitnick was one of the popular ones way back in the 90s. Edward Snowden is a more recent one. I would actually encourage you to look up Edward Snowden and what he did and the controversy around that, because that's actually really interesting to look at everybody's different points of view on the people that agreed with him, disagreed with him, and why. We also actually have hacker groups, and we've also started to see something called hacktivism. Now, hacker groups are a bunch of people that are getting together to do larger projects than a single person could handle. For example, the Church of Scientology. Now, the Church of Scientology, for most people, they don't really see them as a ethical church. And so Anonymous actually had started a basically war on the Church of Scientology. They were also well known for Occupy Wall Street. And they were basically taking the computer knowledge that they had and using that computer knowledge to do things like get attention on the problem of Wall Street stealing money, get attention to the fact that the Church of Scientology tends to take advantage of people, things like that. Now, hacktivists, their argument is activism, such as protesting, like we've seen all summer, is a legal right of Americans, and it's important that we make our voices heard. Now, regular in person protests will generally involve standing in roads, getting attention, filming, things like that. That's not as easy to do online. So, what hacktivists are actually arguing for is we should have ways of being able to protest online, and how should we be able to do that? There's a certain privilege in being able to attend an in person protest, especially if it's in different places in the country. And even during the current COVID plague, being able to actually attend a protest is something that not everybody can do. So, hacktivists are saying that you should be able to do this online. Now, normally we would have a small group discussion. Instead, we're going to have a discussion online. I'm going to have a topic there, and it's going to be labeled ethics discussion. And I expect that you are going to have an opinion, and you're going to have at least 3 sources that back your opinion. If you have an opinion and you can't even find somebody on the internet that agrees with you in the entirety of the internet, I'm going to ask that you seriously reconsider your opinion, because, as we have seen, especially this summer, even the craziest opinions can get somebody to agree with them. And if you can't find anybody that agrees with you, you should probably reevaluate. Not to say you're wrong, just seriously reevaluate where you're coming from. Make sure that you have valid sources. Some dude's YouTube doesn't count as a valid source. I expect you to actually do research in a library, um, database, books, things like that. Now, some examples of ethics in computer security. So these are actually some real life examples. There was actually a school that got in trouble because they put on keyloggers and remote access terminals on loaned laptops. They made the argument that because they were loaning these laptops to students, they should know everything that the students were doing. Now, one of the things that pushed this over the line was they actually used these rats to take pictures when the laptop was open. If you are interested in what happened, you can actually learn more about that. It didn't go well. Other examples are if you work in IT, you might be asked to read emails or check emails from coworkers. You're also likely to hear information about the company before others. If a company is going down, usually IT knows first because they are getting stuff cut, there's prep that needs to be done, servers that need to be put to bed, and so they're going to know before a lot of other people. IT people also tend to be the ones that have to do the data monitoring when somebody is onboarded or let go. They're the ones that usually have to get a lot of that set up. So that's actually ethical issues as well, because you are hearing information before others. Who do you share this with, if anybody? Can you share this at home? Is that okay? What are you allowed to say? What are you not allowed to say? All a matter of ethics. Now, bugs are errors in code. When we talk about a bug in a code, it means that the code is doing something that it wasn't intended to do. When a company has bugs in code, they are going to send out something called a patch, which will fix the bug. Bugs are going to have to be prioritized based off of how severe they are. So is this a small bug where it's maybe the website times out, or is this a large bug where you can accidentally access the customer database, including social security numbers? So we actually want to prioritize what's the most important thing, what's the most important bug. The patch cycle is when we are patching bugs that come in. And then one of the things that we'll see, especially for the more severe bugs, is if we have a really bad bug that comes in, we prioritize it, we get our fix out, we patch it. Somebody can actually reverse engineer our patch to figure out where the bug is. So part of the patch cycle is making sure that the patch has been applied to a bunch of computers. If some time has passed, the patch has come out, and it hasn't been applied, you're actually more vulnerable because hackers know exactly where that vulnerability is and you haven't applied the fix. Bug disclosure. We actually have two different types of bug disclosure. So if a company has a bug in their software, we have something called responsible disclosure. So if we have a security researcher, they found the bug, and they tell the company about the bug. They tell the company, hey, you have 90 days, and then I'm publishing this as part of a paper. That would be considered responsible disclosure, and timelines can vary. Full disclosure is if you have somebody who finds a bug and then yells to anybody, everybody, whole internet, all of media, hey, I found a bug, look, look, look. Now, there can be reasons that people might choose one over the other. Responsible disclosure is usually the preferred one. And I also have a side note here. There are some companies that do bug hunting. If you stay with me for advanced security in the spring, we're actually going to talk about bug hunting, how to do it, and start trying some. Bug hunting can actually be a very profitable thing. There's some companies that will pay you money if you can find bugs, and the amount of money is generally based off the severity of the bug. That being said, there are some companies that really don't like it when people find bugs, don't do the bug bounty programs, and instead try to sue the pants off security researchers. So you have to be very careful about where you are hunting for bugs and sort of how you're going about that. In the year of 2020, a perfect example of this is actually voting machines. I'm going to have a separate special lecture on the security, or lack thereof, of voting machines. And voting machines and bug security is actually an example of a company. Most of the machines are made by somebody called Diebold. They are a company that does not appreciate people looking for bugs, so they are more likely to, shall we say, not participate in these programs. Now, breach disclosure. When a company has a data breach, this means that somebody has come in and stolen the data. Companies are actually supposed to let you know if this happens. So once data has been stolen, they're actually supposed to let people know that data has been stolen, what's been stolen, let people know if they were part of the affected data that's been stolen, and then mitigation strategies. The Equifax disclosure of dumpster fire doom was basically Equifax are the people that keep track of your credit score. They're one of the main companies. A credit score determines everything from the apartment that you rent to, in some cases, the jobs that you can hold. There are some jobs that will actually do a credit check and will consider you not hireable if your credit isn't high enough. Now, Equifax is actually a private company, and they were attacked or had an issue or bug, depending on who you ask. At any rate, quite a bit of data was stolen, including social security numbers. Approximately half of all Americans were a part of this data breach. And I use them as an example, and I call them a dumpster fire because basically every single step of the entire data breach, they didn't do well. So everything from, instead of letting people know, they sat on it. Instead of executives trying to mitigate it, they instead sold stock to try to make money off of it. Instead of offering up a reasonable mitigation service, they basically said, fill out this form, you could get some money, and we've decided that, X amount of dollars have been allocated to this, but it turns out that for everybody that filled it out, we all would have gotten somewhere around 5 cents, and they didn't even have the money to mail it all out. So then they walked that back and said, we'll give you monitoring service if you don't already have it. So just the whole thing went bad from the start. My sort of personal cherry on the top for dumpster fire for this was a security researcher actually created a phishing site, and they created this phishing site for the Equifax disclosure. and whoever was running the Equifax Twitter actually tweeted out the phishing site instead of the real site because they couldn't tell the difference. So it was just a dumpster fire all around. Data exfiltration is when we are sneaking information out of a company. Now, this can happen from insiders sneaking information to hackers, how they get the information from a company server back home. There's some different ways we can do this. We can do things like steganography, where we can hide information in, say, pictures or videos. A lot of companies, especially if they work with government, will tend to have rules about what you're allowed on the campus. So, for example, they won't allow USB drives, phones. A lot of them actually won't allow iPods or cameras because they're basically hard drives. So they don't allow SD cards and things because that's an easy way for data to leave, which is not something that they want. Compliance is how well you are able to follow the laws and practices and specified standards that that match the industry that you're in and the country that you're operating out of. Now, federal data handling in the US, there's some examples of laws that we have to follow. For example, HIPAA. HIPAA is the healthcare and privacy laws, and that's whenever you go to a doctor's office, you have to sign the HIPAA disclosure so that you know what they're allowed to do with your data and not. FERPA is actually for students. Every single person that is a student actually is covered by FERPA, and that dictates who is allowed to be told or talked to about you as a student, up to and including, are you coming to class? That piece of data actually is covered by FERPA. So these different laws will end up relating to what data is allowed to be collected, who is allowed to hold that data, and where that data is allowed to be shared. For example, with HIPAA, you're actually not allowed to use copy machines to copy medical records because the copy machines aren't considered secure, and so they're not supposed to do that. Now, the lab for the week is actually going to be an ethics paper. I have a list of possible topics. You should pick a topic that you are interested in, do some research, and think about the ethical issue. If one of the topics that I've listed isn't interesting to you, feel free to pick your own. Just shoot me an email and check with me first to make sure that it's actually an ethical topic. Please do not just turn in a paper that somebody else wrote or you wrote in a previous semester. This needs to be a new paper. It's really important that you have at least 5 sources. Each and every source needs a reliability check. The CRAP checklist, I actually have 2 guides that you can use for this, but every single source needs to have a reliability checklist. I heard it from a dude on YouTube, never counts as a reliable source. I don't care who dude on YouTube is, doesn't count. I want you to pick other types of sources and go through and actually think about, is it reliable? Why is it reliable? Some suggestions of topics could include things like the digital divide and how that's actually affecting the world today in terms of the people that have technology versus the people that don't have technology. This is actually something we're seeing quite a bit right now, especially with remote learning, the people that have computers that have good internet versus the people that don't. You could look at ethics in terms of encryption and backdoors for government access, algorithms that are being used for job applications, personal information sharing, anything like that. The lab report should be a statement of the problem. You should be fair to both sides and give an explanation of both sides. Then you should tell me your opinion. I want a news article related to the topic. Tell me about how technology and changes in technology will affect it. And then in your bibliography, I want at least 5 sources, including your reliability checklist. And then lastly, I want a summary. Executive summary should be about a paragraph. Paper should be somewhere in the 2-page range, plus the biography. If you're ending up with something in the like 5 to 10-page range, you're doing it wrong. TLDR, please cut. If you're only getting a paragraph, again, you're doing it wrong. Please reread the assignment and continue. If you have any questions, please let me know.